They vanished from a place where everyone knows everyone, and that should have been an advantage. If you care about justice for Lily and Jack, please hit subscribe and tap the notification bell now so you don't miss any update. Every view and every tip keeps pressure on investigators and keeps their names alive. Two small children disappeared from a close-knit rural community where, on paper, going missing without being seen seems almost impossible. The basic facts are heartbreakingly simple. Lily, 6, and Jack were last known to be at their family's home. Yet the normal safeguards of small-town life, watchful neighbors, regular routines, friends dropping by, kids playing in yards, didn't produce the answers you would expect. In communities like this, people maintain a kind of informal surveillance. Mailboxes are checked by neighbors, dogs bark at unfamiliar cars, and someone is usually watching the road. Those ordinary, human layers of care make a disappearance without witnesses unusual. And that's part of why this case has felt so uncanny to locals and strangers alike. When children vanish in such settings, a lot of immediate questions push to the front. How they leave the house? Who saw them last? Which neighbors were driving by that morning? In towns where people greet each other on porches and stop for long conversations, someone almost always notices a car that shouldn't be there, a person moving quickly, or children out of their usual routines. That inherent expectation heightens the sense of violation when no clear witness comes forward. People start to ask, did everyone genuinely see nothing, or is there another reason nothing was reported? The answer is complicated because community dynamics shape what people are willing to say out loud. Close-knit doesn't always mean transparent. Loyalty, fear, old debts, and interpersonal politics can all slow the flow of information. Often, people know more than they speak. A neighbor might have seen a vehicle, but hesitated to report it for fear of becoming entangled in a police process or upsetting social relationships. Or someone might have noticed an argument the night before and felt that it was a private matter. That sort of background, the everyday privacy of neighbors, can leave official canvases thinner than investigators would like. Contrast the informal, neighborly watch with the formal demands of police work, documented statements, verified footage, and physical evidence. Investigators rely on a combination of the two, but when community observation is muted, even the most diligent police unit faces an uphill climb. When the missing are children, that uphill climb becomes an emotional drag on everyone involved. Friends and relatives scramble to check every memory, retracing the kids' last known movements and trying to fill in the hours nobody seems to remember. In a place where you would expect 1,000 small witnesses, the relative silence is deafening, and it has pushed the community into a fierce, anxious search for meaning. That silence didn't fall naturally. It sprang from fear, a fear that something worse than ignorance was protecting knowledge. People began to suspect that silence had a purpose, to shield those who might know more than they say. In a town where secrets are dangerous and reputations matter, the choice to stay quiet is often a protective one. Fear in tight social webs can be a stronger force than conscience. People worry about retribution, about losing friends, about being ostracized. In some cases, fear works as a form of social glue. Keep your mouth shut, and you stay safe. But in this case, that code of silence has become an obstacle to truth. Fear also spreads when people worry about retaliation. Someone with connections, status, or a temper can deter witnesses from speaking out. That quiet is not only about avoiding a police investigation. It's about preventing social or economic consequences. A neighbor might fear losing employment if their term-time job depends on goodwill or worry about being excluded from community events. Those calculations matter because they influence whether a tip is phoned in, whether a door is opened for officers, or whether a memory is shared with investigators. In other words, fear can be a force multiplier for silence. The culture of silence in such a community complicates the work of investigators who must both gather evidence and manage community relations. They rely on cooperation, on people willing to share what they know and to allow authorities to check homes, cameras, and property. But when cooperation is reduced, investigations crowd into narrower channels. official statements, forensic work, and technological searches like video reviews or cell tower records. The balance tips toward paperwork and away from the little human signals that so often make the difference. In a locale where whispers circulate in kitchens but never reach a police notebook, a case can stall painfully. Because of that initial silence, the earliest days of the investigation dealt more with calming a scared public than acting with full, visible urgency. Authorities delivered reassurances intended to prevent panic, statements that the case was being worked, promises that resources were being deployed. Those public reassurances have a purpose: to keep people calm and to avoid false leads. But in this instance, many in the community felt it was a substitute for speed. Where citizens expected door-to-door searches of visible presence and rapid forensics, they sometimes found a slower, more procedural approach. That discrepancy between expectation and public messaging bred frustration and suspicion. People asked why the first public actions appeared cautious rather than aggressive. In missing person protocols, there are strategic reasons to withhold certain operational details. Police might not disclose specifics because doing so could allow a suspect to cover tracks or destroy evidence. Investigative quiet can be tactical. However, when families and neighbors are desperate for action and explanation, tactical patience can feel like passivity. The result is often a widening gap between what the public observes or believes they observe and what investigators are doing behind the scenes. That gap widened when many in the community noticed a concentrated focus on a wooden bridge in early search efforts. It became a central, almost symbolic point of attention. Volunteers and officers spent long hours combing its banks, checking undergrown tangles, and scanning nearby culverts. Why that bridge? Locals say it sits on a forgotten loop of road, near wooded patches and small streams. A place not immediately obvious to the casual passerby, but visible on old maps. For some, the bridge represented a plausible location where someone might move quietly, a spot where a vehicle could pull partially off the road, or where belongings might be set down in haste. But although searches around the bridge were intense, they were also unexplained to many. People wanted to know what specific lead made authorities concentrate on that area. Was it a tip from a caller, a fragment of footage that suggested movement near the bridge, or simply a strategic decision to sweep an underexplored corridor? The lack of clear explanation fueled rumor. Some insisted the bridge was the site of a crucial discovery that investigators weren't ready to disclose. Others claimed the bridge was a diversion, a high-visibility search meant to allay public fear without touching more sensitive lines of inquiry. Both readings are possible in their own ways, and both reflect a community hungry for clarity. Search practices themselves often use geographic logic, a grid system, scent tracking, and environmental analysis to determine likely movement corridors for missing persons. For children, factors like visibility, easy escape routes, and places offering cover matter. Bridges and waterways are sometimes focal points because they unify trails and roads. Yet, when such concentrated effort isn't accompanied by transparent reasons, it leads observers to invent them. In a case where trust is fraying, those inventions can be destructive. Alongside public geography, the human cast of the story centers on a few key figures whose presence and silence matter. The mother, identified publicly as Malaya Brooks Murray, and the stepfather, Daniel Martell, are central because they were the adults last associated with the children. Their actions, demeanors, and accounts shape the narrative for both investigators and the public. A handful of neighbors, too, find themselves in the story. The woman who called in the early morning noise complaint, the neighbor who saw a vehicle in flickering dawn light, the elderly man who swears he heard children playing at a time others say they were not home. These named people become nodes in a larger social map, points where inquiry meets memory, and where every small inconsistency acquires gravity. Locals have reported troubling patterns inside the home that add gravity to the search. Stories circulated of bruises on the children, of nights when food was limited and the family sought meals at neighbors' houses, and of times when the children were seen with marks that suggested rough play or worse. Such observations do not constitute proof, but they exist as part of the community memory that investigators must take seriously. If there were ongoing welfare concerns, they may have been known to some and invisible to others. The presence of such reports raises urgent questions for child welfare services and for investigators. Were these concerns documented? Were checks made? And if so, were they sufficient? When patterns of scarcity, like seeking food at neighbors' homes, appear, they complicate simplistic narratives. Poverty, stress, and strained relationships can coexist with loving care. Families living in hard conditions sometimes do everything in their power to shield children from outside help, seeing interventions as threats rather than supports. That context matters because it shapes how neighbors interpret behavior and how authorities should frame welfare checks. But from the outside, such patterns can also seed suspicion. If a household regularly lacks basics, how does that affect the daily routines that normally protect children? Underneath these concrete concerns, private rumors have flourished. Some whisper that the children were taken to protect them from an unspecified danger. Others suspect foul play, and some fear that a cover-up involves people with influence. Rumors are social by nature. They spread where facts are thin and anxieties high. In small towns, rumors can be corrosive because they pin reputations before investigations can reveal truth. They can also be protective, keeping attention on a case when official momentum slows. The danger is that rumor forces investigators to manage not only evidence, but perception. A major problem in the early hours, according to several local observers and amateur search coordinators, was delay and misinformation. Simple missteps, like missed calls, unchecked trail cam footage, or patrol routes that didn't canvass every possible backyard, can cost precious time. Delays in reviewing footage have been a particular sore point. In missing person cases, video evidence can degrade or be overwritten. Every hour can mean the difference between a clear sighting and a blurred memory. When the public learns that footage from near the home was not immediately pulled and safeguarded, frustration erupts. Investigators will sometimes explain that resource constraints, legal thresholds for accessing private cameras, and a sheer volume of footage complicate immediate review. Those are real constraints, but the public often experiences them as excuses, particularly when grief is acute. Another factor that keeps people from speaking is fear of retaliation and social exile. Naming a suspect can upend a life, and in small places social connections are deeply enmeshed. People fear not just legal consequences, but the loss of friend groups, employment, or the ability to move freely in town. That fear is a form of social control. Silence keeps things stable, even when stability costs clarity. When a community is governed by unspoken rules about who to protect and who to exclude, the pursuit of truth becomes political and fraught. Against all these pressures, the case remains unresolved. There have been no public arrests that explain the disappearance, no bodies discovered, and no confirmed motive offered to the community. The investigation continues, and the answer to the central question, who knows what and when they knew it, rests with someone breaking the silence. It may be a neighbor with a dashcam clip, a friend who remembers a strange late-night conversation, a relative who has grown tired of secrecy, or even one of the adults deciding to speak. Until that happens, evidence grows colder, memories fade, and suspicion hardens into division. Here are the key takeaways from this painful tangle. In small towns, silence protects both the innocent and the guilty. It preserves privacy and loyalty, but it also shields secrets and slows justice. Early investigative delays, whether tactical or logistical, often cripple missing person probes because time and clarity are their most precious resources. What appears as unity in public can mask deep private distrust. People say one thing in the coffee shop and another behind closed doors. Fear and loyalty frequently outweigh the pursuit of clarity, and the social cost of speaking can be too high for many. Finally, truth does not vanish. It can resurface, but time erodes both evidence and memory, making later breakthroughs more difficult. If you have any information, even a small detail that seems irrelevant, authorities urge you to come forward. A moment that felt inconsequential at the time can be the missing piece that turns confusion into clarity. Call the official tip lines, check old footage if you have dash cams or doorbell cameras, and talk to investigators. If you prefer to remain anonymous, use Crime Stoppers or similar services available in your area. The community's silence has kept the case unresolved. One voice breaking that silence could change everything. We will continue to follow this story and bring verified updates as they come. If you want to help keep pressure on the investigation and honor Lily and Jack, please like this video, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Share this report with people who live in the area and encourage any potential witnesses to speak privately to authorities. The path to answers is not easy, but community attention, public pressure, and patient investigation together give the best chance that truth will appear. Don't let their names fade. Keep watching, keep asking, and keep speaking up.